Hello. So, apparently Rephr is having their final site-wide sale ever. We'll see. We'll see what that ends up looking like. But I thought that I would film a video in case this is helpful. I've had a lot of my brushes for over a year, maybe even over 2 years at this point. I kind of forget. And then I've had some for more around like 6 months-ish, maybe a little bit less. And I have pretty well developed thoughts on all of them. And I also just wanted to share my thoughts on the sale and honestly on Rephr kind of as a company and kind of like their marketing strategy and the direction that they seem to be going in with their pricing. But I'm going to start with the brushes because if you're interested in the sale, that's probably what you're interested in. And then I'll get into more of my other thoughts near the end of this video. So let me bring all the brushes out and I will give a quick updated thoughts on all the individual brushes and then Rephr brushes overall. So let me bring them out. Okay, so I tried to put them together in mostly chronological order. On the right side are the ones that I got the longest ago, and I think it was the 37 through the 34, these five that I originally got from Rephr. So this was one order. I want to say I got the 16 as a one-off. This might have been something where you just had to pay shipping or some very minimal price. And then the Shodo set that I got together, and then I think I got the 30 with the Shodo set. I think this was another one where you had to only pay a very minimal price for it. And I have two Shodo 01s for some reason, and I don't really recall why. But these I've had for quite a long time. I want to say it's probably been 2 years now or so. And then these ones I've had for, I really should have looked up when I purchased these, but I think it's been around 6 months that I've had these. I've had these for a good amount of time, and I've used them all quite a lot. So I wanted to give an updated opinion on these because most of these I've at least had initial thoughts. I actually don't think that I did anything with this one. So let me just go over one by one my thoughts on them, starting with the 37. And maybe I shouldn't have put this one first because we're gonna start off on a little bit of a negative note. I really dislike this brush. I find this brush to be just not very pleasing to use. It does pick up products really well. It's pretty dense. And by the way, I'm so sorry about my lighting. I lost the natural light today, and I'm filming a little bit late, so we're working with indoor lighting, which just doesn't look quite as nice. But oh well, it's what I can provide. But anyway, I've tried to use this brush with a lot of different products in a lot of different ways, but the fact of the matter is it's just very pokey. I used this initially when I got this a long time ago, and even though these were my first set of Fude brushes. Like this, I didn't have any other brands before Rephr. And even then, I was kind of like, this is it's a little bit scratchy. And then I got the Wing Goss 13, which is basically just all around a better version of this brush. And I'm sorry to be so blunt on that because I know a lot of people are looking for different things in brushes, but I just don't have a lot of patience for brushes that are really pokey. Like I've tried to give this 37 brush away to my little sister, and she's not nearly as sensitive with brushes as I am. Like she uses synthetic brushes. She doesn't use super expensive things like I do. And she did not want this. She was like, no, thank you. This is very prickly. And then after not using this for a long time, I tried reusing this when I got some Clinique brushes, or not brushes, blushes a while back. And they need a very dense brush to get them out. And this is probably one of the denser, this might be the densest natural hair cheek brush that I have. So I used it, and I had forgotten just how scratchy it was. So this is not fun to use. This is not a unique brush. Okay, like there's a million other brushes like this, and I know you can't get the Wayne Goss one anymore, but like there's a lot of these kinds of brushes. And if you need something really, really dense, honestly, for my Clinique blushes, what's worked really well for me is this Say brush. Now, I got this from my mom. She decluttered this to me, so I don't know how much this cost. I don't know if it's worth the price, but it works really well with the Clinique blushes. And it's very soft. It's very, very soft. It's very clearly synthetic. And I don't think I would use it with any of my other products, but for a very, very hard to get out of the pan kind of product, this is actually a really nice brush for that. But all that to say is, I don't recommend this brush. I can't recommend this brush to anyone. I think that's the worst review I have for any of these brushes. But choose a different one. Choose a different one. And you know what? And I'll come back to this point later. But what I found with Rephr brushes is that the denser the brush, the more likely it is that I strongly dislike the brush. The fluffier the brush, the more likely it is that I actually enjoy the brush and might recommend it. So this is very dense and it's very pokey, and I don't like this. I don't find it to be good to use. Now, in contrast, this 33 brush is quite airy. And to me, that's kind of the problem with it, is it's so airy. There isn't much pushback or anything. And so I know sometimes I'll have problems like picking up product with this. There's only certain things that I'll use this with. Like for a long time, I was trying to use this with Pat McGrath special shades, and it picks them up fine, but then when you go to put them down, it just doesn't give you like enough force. And so I would always end up going back over things with my finger. So, and I don't think that this is a bad brush. I just haven't found a use case for it for me. I've tried it for a lot of different things, from eyeshadows to face products to concealer, and it just doesn't work that well for me. And I think part of it is it's a slightly large brush for this kind of shape, and it's almost a little bit too delicate. It picks up product well, but it struggles to put them down in a way that isn't patchy or like irregular. I feel like whenever I put something down with this, I have to take something back through to buff it out, and I don't like that. I like my brushes to pick up a product and put it down, and that's it. So yeah, I don't love this kind of a brush. I think this kind of a brush, whatever I try to use this for, that purpose is served better by something like the 16 brush, which is like a fluffy blender crease brush. Or let me get my Goss brush. Or depending on what I'm doing, maybe something like the Wayne Goss E1 would be better, because this is a little bit, this has a little bit more chunk to it. It picks up things and it also puts things down really well. And for some reason, the size of this brush doesn't bother me, which is funny because they're very similar in size. But the Wayne Goss brush, I'm fine with. And maybe I'm fine with it because it picks up things and puts them down really well. The Wayne Goss brush doesn't struggle to put things down in an even fashion. It's actually become my main brush for putting eyeshadow all over my lids. And I kind of didn't do eye looks like that before having this brush. And this just makes everything really simple. I really love it. And unfortunately, this Rephr 33 complicates those same kind of things. And then in other cases where maybe I'm trying to put things down that are a more special formula or that need a little bit more pressure, the E4 from Wayne Goss is a much better choice. So I just never end up picking up this 33 brush. It's just never quite the right brush for what I'm trying to do. And it's sad because this is one of the Rephr brushes that I don't think is pokey. And I think that's because it's fluffy. But it just doesn't serve me in any way. Maybe if I had larger eyes, or I don't know. I don't even think that's the case anymore because I like the Wayne Goss E1. So I just don't like this brush. I don't know who this is for or what it's for. Maybe it's for a very light dusting of powder that blends itself out. I don't know. I don't really like it. I will be decluttering these two at some point. Probably the same thing with the 36, which is sad because when I first got the 36, I loved this brush. This was like the concealer brush of my dreams. But after using it for a while, it didn't start becoming scratchy. I just became more aware of how scratchy it was. And I kind of stopped liking it, and I just felt that there were other better things out there. Now, this was better than the concealer brush that I had before, which was from the Sephora Pro collection. I don't have it in front of me, and I don't know where it is. But this was kind of the natural hair version of that. It's a lot thicker. I have a comparison in one of my other videos. So this was okay for a time, but I really got annoyed with how hard it was to wash this. I haven't used this in a very long time, by the way, and I still haven't been able to clean out all of the, like, you see how it's stained from the concealer? Like, there just is concealer in here, and I just haven't been able to get it out. It's such a pain to clean, and this brush, you really, if you're using this with a cream or a liquid concealer, you have to wash it every time. You really do. And it's hard to clean, and it's hard to get everything out of it, and that bothered me so much. And it's also just a little bit big for underneath my eyes. I mean, I made it work, but it wasn't the easiest thing for me to maneuver and use. And it was very easy for me to over apply concealer with it, which was weird because I thought that was kind of the reason for using natural hair, is that it would give you a good finish. And this did sometimes, but a lot of times it didn't. And so eventually when I got, I got fed up with this, and I got the Pat McGrath concealer brush, and I now have the foundation brush too. I use these whenever I'm working with liquid or cream products. I'm actually using this Pat McGrath brush right now to get out the remaining powder from the Westman Atelier setting powder, because it's just so hard caked in there and it's hard to get out. But these brushes I really like for cream and liquid products, and these are what I recommend. You don't necessarily have to get this brand. I'm not very well versed in synthetic brushes, but cream and liquid products, I don't recommend using natural hair brushes, even though a lot of brands seem to indicate that's okay. I haven't found that in my experience. So yeah, I have mixed thoughts about this, because when I originally got this brush, I loved it so much, and now I don't ever reach for it. I just think that there's better things out there. And, well, we can get to this later, but that's one of those things that kind of bothers me about the Rephr, last site-wide sale ever, because I don't think any of these brushes are worth their list price. Their list price I've never considered to be their actual price. The 50% off sale price is what I consider to be their actual list price. And so if that's going away, and you would basically be paying the same amount for a Rephr brush as you would for a more respected Fude brand. And that doesn't make sense to me. Like if you're choosing between a Rephr brush and a Sonia G brush, like if they're priced the same, why in the world would you go for a Rephr brush? It doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, I'll talk on that later. For now, we'll keep on going through these brushes. So the 23 brush, this one, so this is pokey, but it's so small and it's very hard to find brushes that are this small. I really like this brush. I don't like how pokey it is, and I have other brushes that I tend to use instead of this, including, where did I put it? This is from Sonia G. I can't ever read what this is. I think maybe it's Pencil S. It's not quite as small as the Rephr brush, but it really does serve basically the same purpose. And I do tend to reach for the Sonia G one over the Rephr one because it's just less pokey. It just is. This is much nicer to use. It's much nicer in the hand. This is just, it's just not as nice, and it's pokey. But this is not something that I think I would declutter. I would probably still keep that around as like a travel brush. It's still useful. Even though that this is dense and it pokes me, it's still very useful. Now, going on to the 34 brush. This was another brush that I really loved when I initially got it. And I would use it to make very wispy powder shadow eyeliner. And it was really, really good at that. I still don't think that this is actually natural hair though. This is just, it feels synthetic. It works nice. It doesn't poke me at all unless I poke myself in the eye, which does happen sometimes. Yeah, I mean, it's okay, I guess. I don't use it very much anymore, but it is nice for certain looks. But I also probably have other brushes that I would use instead of this. There's a few Goss liner brushes. Well, let me pull one out. I think this is the Goss E8. And I know this is like a different shape and everything, but you see how they have about the same smallness to them. I can make the same looks with both of these. And I actually get a lot more control with the Goss brush. And it actually picks up powder a lot more nicely. Again, I don't think the 34 is something that I would get rid of, at least not right now, but I don't use it very often. And I do reach for other brushes over this. So, and that actually brings me to a point that I'd kind of forgotten about with the 23 brush. I remember when I saw, I think it was Hope Miss Tom, have a review on Rephr brushes that were sent to them. And they made a note about something that I thought was odd. When they purchased their 23 brush, it was labeled as a natural hair synthetic mix, which is interesting because when I bought this, this was labeled as a natural hair brush. And I kind of wonder sometimes if the way that this pokes me, sometimes it reminds me of a synthetic brush. And so I wonder if maybe my older brush is just natural hair or if it was mislabeled. Because I do remember very distinctly when I bought all of these first 5, I did not buy any synthetic hair from Rephr. Just at the time, I was very anti-synthetic brush because I'd had bad experiences with synthetic brushes. So it's interesting to me that now that I've worked with these, 23 and 34 strike me as either having some synthetic in them or possibly being fully synthetic. I don't really have any conclusion to those thoughts. I just thought that was strange and I don't know what to do with that, and it makes me feel weird about maybe being sold something that I wouldn't have purchased. Because if either one of these have any synthetic materials in them, or in the bristle I should say, I wouldn't have bought them. So there's that. Going on to the 16 brush, this out of all my Rephr brushes, maybe my favorite, or maybe one of the Shodo brushes. This is still a little bit large for me, and I do very much prefer something like Wayne Goss's 003, which I finally got my hands on. And I was so happy about it. Now these look like they're about the same size, but the Wayne Goss brush is squirrel hair, and I think it's 100% squirrel hair, so it doesn't have the same heft on your eyes, so it doesn't feel as big when it's in my eye crease, whereas the Rephr 16 can feel a little bit large, but it's still very useful. Not as comfortable, but it's very useful. I don't personally have any issues with this poking me, which is nice. And I would say this is probably the densest brush that I have from Rephr that doesn't poke me at all. So I like this brush. I think it's good. I think I didn't pay very much for it, so I'm fine with whatever I paid for it. But if this was stacked up against something from Wayne Goss or Sonia G, I would go with the Wayne Goss or Sonia G brush. Probably the Wayne Goss brush because I tend to like Wayne Goss's fluffy brushes. Sonia G doesn't make a lot of fluffy brushes, and I love that Wayne Goss does. Oh, and that actually reminds me, I can give you a very quick comparison between these two. I haven't really washed this one yet. I know I should wash my brushes before I start using them, but I typically don't. And this is from the, what's the collection called? I think it's called the Collector's Collection or something like that. This is the number 6. And I do very much prefer the number 6 over the Rephr 16. This is kind of what I was hoping the Rephr 6 was going to be. It's more tapered. It hasn't fluffed out at all, although I do suspect that it will, and I think it'll have a very similar shape to the 16, but I think it comes to a little bit more of a point. And I think also the saving grace for this brush for me is that this is a mix of goat hair and squirrel hair, and I love that it's just a little bit less dense feeling because of that. So anyway, I do like this Rephr 16 brush, but I prefer other brushes over it. But I'm happy to keep it now that I have it. So for the Shodo brushes, I went back and forth on getting these, but I'm happy that I got them. But I do keep on coming up against the fact that they're not super versatile. The Shodo brushes are great for picking up some like powdery matte shadows and laying them down or buffing them out into a very soft look, which is a look that I like to do a lot, so it works well for me. However, if you're taking something that needs to be laid down in a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like in an even fashion to not look patchy, these won't work very well for you. Like if you take a glittery shadow, like say something from, what are those trios called? Like a Kaja trio, like their shimmer. If you take a shimmer out from that and you lay it down, it'll be patchy. If you try to use these with a Pat McGrath special shade that isn't meant to just be sparkle, it'll look a little bit patchy. If you use a creamier matte, something that's not really powdery at all, it has a little bit more substance to it, it's a little bit thicker, these will struggle. So I'm still really surprised that the Shodo line was recommended for cream or liquid formulas. I haven't used them for that, but I cannot see them working well with a denser formula. I just don't see that working. Maybe a very light liquid formula, maybe that could work, but I don't know. I'd be very surprised. These are just, I like them because they fit a use that I do a lot. I like very soft looks. I like taking powdery matte and kind of lightly putting it all over my lid or my eyes and blending it out and calling it a day. Like, I like that, so they work well for me. And they're they don't poke me. I don't think any of these poke me, which I like. Even the Shodo one, which is actually quite dense, it's really more of a extended pencil brush than it is a blending brush, which surprisingly makes it not very useful for me. I thought that I would love a brush like this, but now that I have one, I don't find it very useful. I find it too flimsy to use in place of a pencil brush and not fluffy enough to use as a crease brush or a blender brush. So I'm still figuring out what exactly to use this for. Sometimes I'll use it as an inner corner highlight brush. Sometimes I'll use it for smoking out the lower lash line, but frankly, I have other brushes that I prefer for that. I don't hate this brush. I don't love it either, you know? And okay, and this is my other Shodo one brush. Now, the Shodo 3 and 4, I quite like. And I like because they're the more wispy version of the 16. And they're quite similar to the 16. I think the Shodo 4 is the most similar in size, but honestly, there's not a huge difference between the 3 and the 4. So in order, we have the Shodo 4, the 16, and the Shodo 3. Shodo 3 is a little bit shorter, but it's otherwise it seems to have about the same girth. And then the Shodo 4 is the same length, maybe just a tad longer than the 16. And they really have about the same fluff, even though it's not really showing up here. But they don't have the same density as the 16, and that works well for me because that's my kind of my one issue with the 16 is it's just a little bit too dense, and so when I'm blending things out in my crease, it can just feel a little bit big. And so the Shodo 3 and 4 don't have that issue. So I quite like them. I quite like them. But again, they're very limited in what formulas I can use them with. I think my saving grace is I just like a nice light powdery matte that you just kind of blend out, and it blends out for you. And then, wait, did I go over the Shodo 2? Oh no, I had it out of order. Oh well. Well, the Shodo 2, kind of like the 3 and 4, the Shodo 1 and 2 aren't wildly different. Like the Shodo 2 is longer, and I guess you can use it more for blending, but it still has this, it's still, to me, a little bit more like an extended pencil brush, or something that you use as a crease brush, but it's a very, very targeted crease area. Like you're just trying to darken up like the very corner of your eye. You could use this for that, but or maybe if you have really teeny tiny eyes. Although I have pretty tiny eyes, so I don't know. Maybe if you're looking for more like a really tiny blender brush, maybe you could use this. I just like larger blender brushes. I just don't like them to have a lot of density. But I would say out of all of these brushes, the ones that I am most happy to have are the Shodo brushes. There's something that I use a lot that I really like. But I struggle to recommend them to people because I don't know if other people are going to have the same preferences as me, and if people are okay getting a whole set of these just to use them for really light looks. I don't know. I feel like I don't see that as being a popular thing. I also don't know if all of these are going to be available. I know I saw a duo in the shop. I think it might have been the Shodo 4 with the Shodo 1, which is kind of an odd combo. It's the largest brush with the smallest brush, but I think if I had to choose between all the Shodo brushes, I would keep my 3 and 4. I keep my 0, 0. I kind of like this too. It's kind of an odd brush, but I like it. Well, these are all odd brushes, but I like them. So enough about those. Hopefully that gives you a good feel for them. Like I said, I struggle to recommend them even though I like them a lot. So if your use case matches what these provide, then good for you. And if they don't, I don't recommend picking them up. Um, they're not super versatile. Let's say that. So this last one here, the 30 brush. The only reason I got this was because it was basically free and it was a big, fluffy, expensive brush. And I was like, yeah, I'll take that for free. Thank you. I did not expect to like this brush, but I've always wanted to get one of these. I was very curious. And I'm really happy I picked this up because I do surprisingly like this. Now, one caveat, just so that we're all on the same page here. When it comes to big fluffy brushes, I do strongly prefer something that is tapered, like the Goss E1 brush. And as you can see, the Rephr 30 brush is kind of the opposite shape. And that's the reason why I would never like pick this up myself and pay for it, is because it's just opposite of what I'd be looking for. I have 3 of these now, by the way. And I'm very happy. That was a very good decision. And I know one of you said in the comments that I talked you into buying one of the brushes. Please tell me if you like this brush, because I feel very responsible for that purchase. And I hope you didn't pay too much for the brush too. But let me know. I want to know. But anyway, this is like my favorite fluffy brush. It's my only fluffy brush that I keep around, really. But I was really surprised how much I liked the Rephr 30 brush, and I think what I was most surprised about was it doesn't poke me at all. I kind of expected this brush to be pokey. I expected it to be a lot like the 37. And I think what I failed to realize is just how much denser the 37 brush is than the 30. The 30 is incredibly airy. It's more airy than the Goss E1. It's actually more on the it's most like, I have this old flawless face brush from Bare Minerals. This is very old. This is about the level of density that you get from the Rephr 30 brush. It's just very, very not dense, which is good. I mean, I think this is meant as like your setting powder or finishing powder brush, where you're just dusting on a little bit of powder. And this works really well with my Huda powder. I really, really like it for that powder. And that's been a powder that I've struggled a little bit to use, to figure out which brush to use with it, because I usually will pull out my Goss E1, and I think this is just a little bit too dense to use with that powder. Like, I can make it work, but it's just not meant for that kind of a powder. This is much better for a pressed powder or a baked powder, like what I usually use. But this is actually much more ideal for the Huda loose powder. So I like it for that. And I like how comfortable this is to use. Like, you see me like just petting this. Like, this feels very nice. This feels very nice. And I would say out of all of my brushes, this is the softest, which I guess surprises me because it's such a big brush and there's so much fiber here, and its list price isn't that much. I guess I would just expect them to cheap out on this brush, you know. But it feels very nice to me. I have nothing bad to say about this brush, and I will be keeping this around for using with loose powders. This is really my only like good loose powder brush, and I really like it for that. But this brush also made me realize what I mentioned earlier. The fluffier the brush from Rephr, the more I like it. I think they do fluffy brushes well. And I'm not entirely sure why that is. My current theory is that they're not using the highest quality materials like Sonia G and Goss. They're using lower quality materials, and you're not going to notice that as much with a fluffy brush. That's why dense brushes are so hard to make. And I think that's part of the reason that Sonia G makes a lot of really dense brushes, to my chagrin, because they're hard to, like a good dense brush that is dense and it gives you a lot of control but also doesn't poke you, it's hard to find. And so I find myself really enjoying the Shodo brushes, the 30. I mean, I also like the 16 as well. And then I realized that these are all very fluffy by comparison, especially with the 33, 37, 36. These three are quite, well, actually no, the 33 is, what am I saying? 33 isn't dense. This one's quite airy too. I just don't like it. But the 36 and the 37 are dense. And the 23, that's what I meant to go to. And the 23 is quite dense. And these three poke me. Even if I like the use of the brush, like the 23, it pokes me. So I don't enjoy using it because of that. So I guess what I'm trying to get to here is I'm going to change my recommendation for Rephr a little bit. I think in one of my earlier videos, I had said something like, don't go to Rephr if you have sensitive skin. If you're picky about brushes like me, and you're someone who really likes like a squirrel hairbrush or something, these are probably not going to do it for you because they're going to poke you. I think I would amend that to, if you like fluffy brushes and you're looking for fluffy brushes and you're okay with them being not very versatile, I think that's what I have enjoyed the most from Rephr is their fluffy brushes. And I would say maybe just across the board at this point to stay away from their denser brushes. Because like I said, when I was talking about the 37 brush, I tried to give this away to my little sister who is not picky about brushes. And this was way too scratchy for her. Like I saw her put it to her face. She was like really excited because I had gotten her, I think it was a Dior highlight or something. And she was using this with it. And she just put it to her face and she was like, oh, this is scratchy. So yeah, I really, maybe I wonder sometimes if I'm being too harsh with the brushes, like my review, if I'm being too harsh in reviewing them, or if I'm not being harsh enough. I don't know, because I am very sensitive. But that's probably what I amend my views on Rephr to, is go with their fluffy brushes. If you're thinking about getting denser brushes, maybe double think that. I don't know if I would recommend any of their denser brushes at this point with the experiences that I've had across the board. So that's it for the brushes. If I've left out anything or if you have any questions, let me know below. I'm always curious to hear what you think about brushes and specifically the Rephr brushes. So now I want to talk a little bit about Rephr's last sale ever and why it kind of bothers me. Because like I said earlier, I don't consider their actual list price to be their list price. Rephr's brushes have, as far as I've been aware of the brand, they've always had these very large 50% off of everything sales. And that's what a lot of reviews are geared towards. And a lot of reviews that I've seen don't necessarily specify that they got Rephr brushes 50% off. And honestly, now that I'm thinking about that, that might be because a lot of people got them in PR. But all of this comes back to, I don't recommend paying the list price for these, because the list price for these is very much in line with something like from Goss and Sonia G, which are the brands that I'm most familiar with. I know there's a lot of other food aid brands out there, but I remember looking at the list prices once and I was like, who would pay that? And so maybe something to think about if you're thinking about shopping this sale is, what are you looking for in a brush? Do you want something that's cheaper but you know, lower quality, or do you want something that is more expensive and higher quality? And after this sale, if these brushes aren't going on sale anymore, at that point I would say there's no reason to buy from Rephr. I would just go to Goss or Sonia G or the other numbers of food aid businesses out there. And I've kind of wondered over a long period of time, like what Rephr's overall strategy was. I've always wondered if they were going to revert to expecting people to pay the list price for these things. I think my recommendation to you above all is just think about what you want in your brushes before you buy them. I think the unfortunate thing about Fude is you can't go and try things before you buy. You can't just stop into a Sephora or an Ulta or somewhere else and try these out. You just can't. You have to go off of other people's reviews, or you just buy them and you see if you like them or you don't like them, and then you're kind of stuck with them. And I feel like there's always just so much hype around Rephr brushes, and I just don't love that. I don't love that, and I don't love a lot of the reviews that I've seen about Rephr brushes. I try to be very balanced in my reviews, um, because even though I know that these aren't necessarily my favorite brushes, I know they are some people's favorite brushes, and I know some people are not willing to pay the prices that I do for Fude, which is totally fine. So I try very hard to give you the pros and cons of any specific brush. But I think if Rephr truly is going to expect you to pay the same price for their brushes as for brands that are, in my opinion, much higher quality, I just don't get that. I don't understand that. And I don't want you to get pulled into buying something that you wouldn't have if you had more information. So all that to say is, if you're thinking about buying from the final sale, be smart about it. And if you're buying after the final sale, just make sure that you know what you're getting yourself. Just make sure that you are paying attention to the price and that you're not just being pulled into the hype or expecting Rephr to be good because it's a brand that has a lot of reviews on YouTube. Just be judicious with your dollars. I thought I had a lot more to say on that, and I feel like I'm just going in circles now. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. But if you have any questions or comments or anything, please feel free to put them in the comments below. I always love our little conversations, even though I know I'm not very good at getting back to them in a timely manner. I'm so sorry. Life is just crazy. But I hope this was helpful. I hope this was useful. And I hope to see you in the next video. So I'll see you later. Bye for now.